Long ago, in the ancient Azu kingdom, there flowed a vast river known as Obana River. The river wasn't just any ordinary water body, it was home to fascinating creatures that looked half human and half fish. The Z people, as the villagers called them, had lived there for generations. The villagers believed the Z people had mystical powers, and many whispered that their songs could calm storms or summon rain during droughts. Every morning, children would rush to the river bank, their small feet kicking up dust as they ran. Look, 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 the mermaids are coming, a child would shout, pointing at the water where blue scales sparkled beneath the surface. The adults would gather too, watching the peaceful scene as Z people swam near the surface, sometimes waving to the humans. The Z people often sang songs in a language no human could understand, their voices blending with the sound of the flowing water to create a mesmerizing melody. The fishermen would carefully navigate their boats around the areas where Z people swam, and there was an unspoken agreement about sharing the river's resources. But peace never lasts forever. One fateful morning, Toma, one of the most respected fishermen in Azu, went out early to cast his net. The sun had barely risen, and mist still clung to the water's surface. As he threw his nets, they landed in an area where young Z children were playing. Human, you're too close to our children, the Z man shouted, his voice sharp with warning. Toma pulled at his net. I've been fishing here for 20 years. These waters belong to everyone, not where our children swim. The Z man's face darkened with anger. All the Z people began surfacing, their faces worried. A young mermaid swam too close to one of Tama's nets and became tangled. My son! Aziz screamed, diving toward the net. In the chaos, as Z people tried to free the child, and Toma tried to protect his nets, something went terribly wrong. The Z child was hurt, and the angry Z people killed Toma. Toma's body was found floating in the river. The news reached King Dara within the hour. The king sat on his throne, his face growing darker, as the village elder explained what had happened. Your Majesty, the elder finished, the people are afraid. If the Z people can kill our best fishermen, King Dara stood, his voice thundering through the throne room. Bring me my advisors and send word to every village along the river. That evening, the king made his proclamation from the palace steps. They have taken one of our own, he thundered, his voice echoing off the stone walls. From this day forward, no Z person shall be permitted to swim at the surface of Obana River. Any who dare defy this decree shall face immediate death. The peace between our peoples is forever broken. The decree changed everything. The Z folk retreated to the river's bottom, where they established their own kingdom under Malo, a strong and wise Z man who became their king. Malo's rule was marked by efforts to heal the wounded hearts of his people, and he began to train warriors to defend their realm, should humans ever attempt to invade the depths. Years passed, and in the underwater kingdom, life adapted to the darkness of the deep. Malo's daughter, Zara, grew into a curious young mermaid who often asked questions about the world above. One day, while helping her mother prepare their home for a celebration, Zara couldn't contain her curiosity. Mother, she said, what's it like at the surface? Aina paused, memories flickering across her face. Why do you ask, my dear? I hear the older ones talking sometimes about how things used to be. They mention something called sunlight. What is it? Aina looked at her daughter. Sunlight is, imagine the brightest, warmest thing you can think of. It's like that, but more beautiful than you can imagine. It makes everything glow with life, and the humans. Zara's eyes sparkled with interest. What were they like before? Are they different from us? They walk on two legs instead of swimming with tails. They used to be our friends. Long ago, the children would wave to us, and we'd wave back. Then why can't we talk to them anymore? Because fear and anger poisoned both sides, Ina explained. One terrible day changed everything. Well, we must stay here, where it's safe. But Zara couldn't stop wondering about the surface world. Late at night, when everyone else slept, she would swim as high as she dared, almost but not quite breaking the surface. The faint moonlight that filtered down fascinated her. One morning, King Malo noticed his daughter's distraction during their breakfast. What troubles you, my daughter? He asked. Father, why must we live in darkness? Surely not all humans are cruel. Malo's face grew serious. Zara, you don't understand the danger. The humans blame us for the death of one of their own. Their king has ordered our death if we are seen at the surface. But that was so long ago. Maybe things have changed. Some things don't change, my dear. Promise me you won't go to the surface. Zara remained silent, and her father sighed heavily. Meanwhile, in the palace above, Prince Aken was facing his own struggles. His father, King Dara, had summoned him to the throne room for what had become a regular argument. Son, the king said, I've received another message from King Tanu. Aken sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Father, I understand, but no. King Dara slammed his fist on the table. Every suitable young woman in the kingdom has been presented to you. What more are you waiting for? I want to marry for love? Aken replied quietly. Is that so wrong? Love? The king scoffed. Love is a luxury we cannot afford. We need stability. And what about my future? Aken asked quietly. Your future is the kingdom, King Dara shouted. When will you understand that your personal desires don't matter? They should matter to my father, if not to my king, Aken replied, then immediately regretted his words. Get out, the king said, his voice dangerously quiet. Get out of my sight until you're ready to act like the prince you're supposed to be. Seeking solace, Aken found himself walking toward the Obana River. The moon cast a silver path across the water as he settled on a fallen log near the bank. The gentle lapping of waves against the lapping of waves against the shore always helped calm his troubled mind. That's when he saw her. A head emerged from the water, followed by shoulders and the most beautiful face he had ever seen a mermaid. Her scales had an unusual glittering blue tint. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither moved. Please, she whispered, don't call the guards. You shouldn't be here. It's dangerous. I know, Zara said, moving closer to the bank, but I had to see what it was like up here. Everything is so different. The air, the sounds, the way light moves. I'm Aken, he found himself saying. I'm Zara, she smiled, and Aken felt his heart skip a beat. This is my first time seeing the surface. Is that the moon? Yes, he said, pointing upward. And those are stars. They're beautiful. Zara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. We can see a little bit of light through the water, but nothing like this. They talked for hours that night, sharing stories about their different worlds. Aken told her about life in the palace, the pressure to marry, and his dreams of finding true love. Zara spoke about the underwater kingdom, her father's wisdom, and her burning curiosity about the surface world. Hours passed like minutes. I should go, Zara said, as the sky began to lighten. My mother will be worried. Will you come back tomorrow night? Aken asked hopefully. Zara hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but we must be careful. When she returned home, her mother was waiting. Where have you been? Ina demanded, her face pale with worry. I just wanted to see the surface. Zara, have you lost your mind? They will kill you if they catch you. Mother, maybe they're not all as cruel as you think. Not cruel. Ina's voice rose. They would kill you without a second thought. Promise me you won't go up there again. But Zara couldn't make that promise. Night after night, she and Aken met by the river. They shared stories, dreams, and eventually their hearts. Their love grew deeper with each meeting. One night, after several months of meetings, Zara arrived looking troubled. What's wrong? Aken asked, immediately concerned. My father. He's arranging a marriage for me, she said, her voice trembling. Aken felt his heart constrict. When? In 2 months' time, Zara replied, looking up at him, her eyes glistening with tears. Aken, I don't want to marry him. I love you. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, bridging two worlds that had been separated by hatred and fear for so long. Neither of them noticed the rules their love would break until it was too late. Weeks turned into months, and their secret meetings continued. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves. One morning, Zara felt strange. Her swimming felt heavier, and her stomach turned with an unfamiliar sensation. When she told her mother she wasn't feeling well, Ina's experienced eyes widened with recognition. Your scales are changing color, Ina observed, and you've been sleeping more than usual. Zara, are you with child? Zara couldn't meet her mother's gaze. Yes, she whispered. Who is the father? When Zara remained silent, Ina's voice grew sharp. Zara, who is the father? His name is Aken, Zara whispered. He's human. Human? Have you lost your mind? Do you know what they would do to you, to your child? He's not just any human. He's different, Mother. He's kind and understanding, Zara whispered. He's Prince Aken. Ina's face went pale. The son of King Dara. The very king who ordered our banishment. Oh, Zara, what have you done? Devastated by her mother's reaction and desperate to find Aken, forgetting in her distress that it was broad daylight, Zara fled to the surface. The moment her head broke the water surface, shots erupted from the riverbank. Nets flew through the air, and before Zara could dive back to safety, she was entangled. Rough hands dragged her onto the shore, where angry villagers surrounded her. "Please," she begged, "I mean no harm." "No harm," a fisherman spat. "Like your people meant no harm to Toma." The beating began. Fists and feet rained down on her as she tried to protect her stomach, thinking only of her unborn child. In the palace, a guard burst into the throne room. Aken's heart stopped. Without a word to his father, he ran, his legs burning as he sprinted through the village, praying he would reach her in time. But when he arrived, it was too late. Zara lay still on the riverbank, her shiny blue scales dulled with dirt and blood. The crowd fell silent as their prince fell to his knees beside her. "What have you done?" he whispered, then louder. What have you done? You've killed them both, my love and my child." The crowd stepped back, shocked by his words. King Dara, who had followed his son, stood frozen at the edge of the gathering. From the river came a sound like thunder, and the water began to churn. Mallow, king of the Z people, rose from the depths, his trident glowing with power. Behind him, an army of merfolk broke the surface, their faces twisted with grief and rage, ready to dye the river red with blood. Finally, it was Zara's mother who stepped forward to broker peace. Standing before both kings, she spoke, "My daughter died for love. Let her death be the last. Let her death be the last. Let her story teach us that hatred only breeds more hatred, while love might have shown us a better way." A new treaty was drawn up. The merfolk would no longer be banned from the surface, and humans would no longer react with violence to their presence. It wasn't perfect, but it was imperfect. But it was a beginning. Prince Aken never married. He devoted his life to maintaining peace between the two peoples, and every night until his death, he would sit by the river, remembering the love that changed two kingdoms. The story of Zara and Prince Aken teaches us a profound lesson about the consequences of hatred and the transformative power of love. It warns us about the dangers of allowing fear, prejudice, and anger to govern our actions and relationships. Their tale reminds us that misunderstandings and divisions only lead to suffering and loss, while empathy, open-mindedness, and courage to love can pave the way for healing and unity. Zara and Aken's love defied the boundaries of two opposing worlds, yet their tragic fate revealed the cost of hatred and ignorance. It is a call for humanity to bridge divides, to listen, and to understand one another, no matter how different we may seem. This story encourages us to embrace compassion and reject the cycles of violence and vengeance that perpetuate suffering. Let us reflect on their sacrifice and strive to build a world where differences are celebrated and love prevails over hate. Thank you for watching my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking and inspiring stories like this one. Stay tuned for more exciting content only on this channel. As she opened the carton, a strange smell filled the kitchen, a pungent aroma that made her stomach churn slightly. She began washing the meats, noticing how unnaturally firm the texture felt under her fingers. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against something hard, a human finger. In the outskirts of a big city stood a ground house with tall, imposing walls covered in ivy. The house belonged to the wealthy Okoye family, who rarely interacted with their neighbors. They were known for keeping to themselves, and they were a very successful couple. A teenage girl from a small village surrounded by lush greenery, started working for the Okoye family 4 months ago. At first, it seemed like a good job. They paid her well, and she had enough to eat, but she was never allowed to leave the house. The workload was heavy, and she often found herself cleaning, cooking, and running errands for long hours without much rest. Despite the workload, she wasn't unhappy, but something always felt off, like the house was hiding a secret. Mr. Okoye and his wife, Madame Chika, had peculiar habits. They never ate beef, goat meat, chicken, or fish. Instead, they always requested one specific type of meat that Amaka couldn't quite identify. It looked like pork, but the texture and color were slightly different, with a faint, unfamiliar aroma. Whenever Amaka asked about it, Madame Chica would just brush her off, saying it was a special delicacy from her hometown. Amaka tried to ignore her growing unease, convincing herself that it was none of her business. Maybe the couple had strange tastes, or maybe it was for health reasons. However, her suspicions were aroused further when she noticed that no one else in the household ate the strange meat. Jeed, the driver, and Emeka, the gate man, would always make excuses when offered a plate, saying they had already eaten or weren't hungry. When Amaka tried to ask them why, they would look at her with fear in their eyes and tell her to mind her own business, leaving her even more confused. One day, Madame Chica came home with a large carton of the mysterious meat, its packaging damp from ice that had partially melted. Amaka was instructed to prepare it immediately. As she opened the carton, a strange smell filled the kitchen, different from anything she had encountered before, carrying an unsettling metallic hint. She began washing the meats, her hands working mechanically as her mind drifted towards her family back home and the last time she had seen her siblings laughing under the baobab tree. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against something hard and out of place. Puzzled, Amaka pulled the piece out of the water. It was a long, thin bone, unlike anything she had ever seen in meat before. She continued to inspect it, her heart pounding, and then her eyes fell on something that made her gasp and drop the meat on the floor. A human finger. Amaka's world tilted, and she staggered back, clutching the sink for support. Her stomach churned, and she barely made it to the trash bin before vomiting. She looked back at the meat, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. It can't be true, she thought to herself. Her mind raced. How many times had she cooked this meat? How many times had Mr. and Mrs. Okoye sat at their table, eating with pleasure, while she unknowingly served them human flesh? She felt sickened, guilty, and terrified all at once. What kind of people were they? And more importantly, what would happen if they found out she knew? Amaka knew she had to get out of that house, but escaping was easier said than done. The gates were always locked, and Emeka, the gate man, never allowed anyone to leave the house without Mr. or Mrs. Okoye's permission. Jeed, the driver, was equally unfriendly and would not help her, no matter how much she pleaded. Amaka felt trapped, like a prisoner in a house filled with dark secrets. For the next few days, Amaka tried to act normal, pretending she hadn't seen anything. She did her chores quietly, keeping her head down and avoiding eye contact with anyone. But inside, she was plotting her escape. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, she would tiptoe to the kitchen, trying to find a way out. She thought about climbing over the fence, but it was too high and covered in sharp, broken glass. She considered sneaking out when the gates were briefly opened, but Emeka was always watching, his stern face lit dimly by the yellow glow of the security lamp. The days dragged on, each one filled with fear and anxiety. Amaka couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She was haunted by nightmares of bones and blood, of Mr. and Mrs. Okoye finding out she knew their secrets, of Miss out she knew their secrets. She knew she had to get out before it was too late. One morning, as Amaka was cleaning the living room, she overheard Madame Chika on a phone call. She was talking in a hushed tone, her voice calm but menacing. "Make sure the delivery is on time," Madame Chika said. "We have guests this weekend, and they are expecting something special." Amaka's blood ran cold. Who were these guests, and what did Madame Chika mean by something special? The thought that the Okoyes were not just eating human flesh, but possibly serving it to others, made Amaka's skin crawl. She knew she had to leave that day, no matter the cost. That evening, Amaka made her first attempt to escape. She packed a small bag with her most important belongings and waited until the house was quiet. She sneaked down to the back door, hoping to slip past Emeka while he was on his usual night rounds, his footsteps heavy and deliberate on the gravel. But as soon as she stepped outside, Emeka appeared from the shadows. "Where do you think you are going?" he asked. Amaka tried to come up with an excuse, but the fear in her voice gave her away. I I just wanted some fresh air," she stammered. Emeka grabbed her arm roughly. "Get back inside. You know the rules. No one leaves this house." Defeated, Amaka returned to her room, tears streaming down her face. She was scared, but she refused to give up. She had to be smart, to think of another way. Days went by, and Amaka tried to gain Emeka's trust, bringing him extra food and helping him with his chores. But Emeka remained cold and distant, unwilling to be swayed by her kindness. Then, one fateful afternoon, Amaka noticed something that gave her a glimmer of hope. Gidi, the driver, was always careful about locking the car doors when he parked, but on this particular day, he was distracted, talking loudly on his phone as he stepped away. Amaka saw that he had left the back door of the car slightly open. A plan formed in her mind. She would hide in the car and wait for Jeet to leave the compound. It was risky, but it was her only chance. She quickly packed her bag again, making sure it was small and light. When the time was right, she slipped into the back seat, crouching down and pulling a blanket over herself to stay hidden. Her heart pounded as she lay still, praying that no one would find her. Minutes felt like hours, and just when she thought she couldn't bear the suspense any longer, Jeed returned. He started the engine and drove towards the gates. Amaka held her breath as Emeka opened the gate, letting the car out on the gate, letting the car out. For the first time in months, Amaka felt a surge of hope. She was finally outside those walls, but her relief was short-lived. Jeed stopped at a nearby market, where he usually ran errands for the Okais. Amaka knew she had to get out before Jeed noticed her, so she quietly slipped out of the car and blended into the crowd. She didn't stop running until she was far away from the market. Her legs were aching and her lungs were burning. Amaka found her way to the nearest police station, shaking as she told the officers everything she had seen. At first, they were skeptical, finding it hard to believe that such a respected couple could involve themselves in something as horrific as that. But Amaka's fear and sincerity were impossible to ignore. They launched an investigation, and what they discovered shocked the entire city. Madame Chica had been part of a black market ring that trafficked human organs and meat. The strange meat she brought home was sourced from illegal slaughterhouses run by a network of criminals. The police raided the Okoye's home, uncovering evidence that linked them to the gruesome trade. Mr. and Mrs. Okoye were arrested and their dark secrets were exposed. Amaka's bravery in coming forward helped save countless lives and brought justice to those who had been exploited by the sinister ring. She found a safe place to stay and started a new job far away from the horrors she had escaped. Though the memories would always haunt her, she knew she had done something great. Mr. Something Great and Mrs. Okoye spent the rest of their lives in jail. And that was how the story of Amaka, the brave girl, ended. The lesson from this story is that our instincts often guide us to the truth, even when it's hidden beneath layers of deceit. If something feels wrong, don't ignore it, no matter how respectable or harmless things might appear on the surface. Trust your gut feelings and take action when necessary. Speaking out against injustice, no matter how difficult, can not only protect you, but also help others in similar situations. Your bravery and willingness to act could bring about justice and save lives. Thank you so much for watching my channel. If you enjoyed this story or learned something valuable, please remember to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to catch more of these compelling narratives. Your support means the world to me. See you in my next video. Bye! Linda realized she was pregnant. She tried to hide it from everyone, including her parents. She even tried to get rid of the pregnancy with the help of Mira and Oki, but it didn't work. Eventually, her mother noticed the changes in her behavior, the morning sickness, her exhaustion, and asked her about it. Linda denied it at first, but later she had to tell the truth. Once upon a time, in a small village wrapped in the arms of nature, there lived a girl named Linda. Linda was like a shining star in her village, known for her beauty that seemed to light up the whole place. She was the only child of her loving parents. Her father, a hardworking farmer who always came home with a smile despite his fatigue, and her mother, a skilled weaver whose hands wove magic into cloth, creating colorful patterns that seemed to tell stories of their own. In this village, where every sunrise brought a new story, Linda was a tale of her own. From the elders sitting under the baobab tree to the youngsters playing near the stream, everyone knew of Linda. They admired her not just for her looks, but for the kindness that sparkled in her eyes. Strangers who passed through the village for trade or travel couldn't help but notice Linda. They often left gifts, coins, and pretty trinkets, as if touched by her grace. Linda's parents, though simple in their means, treated her like a queen. They dreamed of a future where she would find a love as grand as the tales told by the traveling birds. They hoped for her to meet a man who was not only handsome, but kind-hearted, someone who would cherish their precious daughter as they did. In this village, where each day flowed like a gentle river, Linda's life was simple, yet full of warmth. She helped her mother with weaving, often spending hours working on the loom while listening to her mother tell stories of her own youth. Sometimes she accompanied her father to the fields, watching him work tirelessly under the sun and helping whenever she could by carrying water or gathering vegetables. Her laughter was a melody that resonated in the hearts of those who heard it, and it often echoed through the fields and along the village paths, brightening everyone's day. This is the story of Linda, the village jewel, whose life was about to take a turn she never expected, a story of beauty, choices, and the mysterious paths of life. Let us walk with her on this journey and see where the winds of fate take her. In the same village, not far from where Linda lived, there were two girls named Mira and Oki. They came from the richest families in the village, living in large, beautifully decorated houses, with gardens full of bright flowers, Everybody respected them because of their wealth. They wore the most expensive clothes, made of fabrics imported from distant lands, and had things that even the hardest working farmer couldn't afford. They didn't make friends with other girls because they thought they were better than everyone else. As Linda turned 17, her beauty became even more mesmerizing. Her long dark hair flowed like silk, and her eyes seemed to hold the warmth of the sun. Everyone in the village wanted to see her. One day, Mira and Oki were sitting by the stream, laughing and talking. Linda came to fetch water. She was polite and greeted them, as she always did with everyone. When she was about to leave with her water, Mira and Oki called her. They asked if they could be her friends. Linda's heart swelled with happiness at this unexpected offer of friendship. She couldn't believe that the most respected girls in the village wanted to be friends with her. She hurried home, excited to share the news with her mother. Her mother, wise and thoughtful, listened to Linda's excited chatter. She smiled, but also offered a word of caution. It's good to make new friends, but be careful, Linda. We don't have what they have. They might try to change you, she warned, her fingers moving deftly across the loom as she spoke. Linda's mother also told her to stay true to herself and her values despite the allure of this new world. But Linda was too excited to worry. She was so thrilled at the prospect of being friends with Mira and Oki. She started spending more of her time with them. They went out together, played, and explored the village. Mira and Oki showed Linda places she had never been, including the grand gardens of their homes, filled with flowers of every color and exotic decorations that dazzled Linda. Linda's life began to change. She was entering a new world with her new friends, a world different from the simple life she had always known. The lavish meals at Mira and Oki's homes, the lavish meals at Mira and Oki's homes, the luxurious clothes they wore, and the carefree way they lived fascinated Linda. She began to wish for more than the simplicity of her old life. As the days passed, Linda found herself increasingly absorbed in the lives of her new friends, drawn into a world that glittered with wealth, but was perhaps not as bright as it seemed. This was a new chapter in Linda's life, one that would lead her down paths she had never imagined. Linda, Mira, and Oki became close friends. One day, they heard about a big festival happening in a nearby village. Mira and Oki were excited and wanted Linda to come with them. Linda hesitated at first. The idea of venturing out to a festival in another village was daunting. She thought of her parents, their expectations, and the simple life she was accustomed to. But Mira and Oki were persuasive. They painted pictures of the fun and excitement that awaited them, the music, the dancing, the colorful lights that would fill the night sky. They said to Linda, "You're old enough to make your own choices. You don't have to tell your parents everything." Slowly, Linda's hesitation turned into curiosity. After thinking about it, Linda agreed to go with them. It was her first time going to such a big event without her parents, At the festival, Linda caught the eyes of many men. They all wanted to talk to her because of her beauty. At first, she didn't want to speak with them, but Mira and Oki encouraged her. They said, "You're beautiful and you can get anything you want with your looks." So Linda started talking to them, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness as she ventured into this new social scene. Then, a young man named Darren came to the festival. He saw Linda and wanted to meet her. They talked and they got along well. Darren was charming, with a bright smile and an easy laugh that made Linda feel special. After meeting Darren, Linda felt different. She started thinking she could live a life different from the one in her village. She liked the attention and the new way of life her friends showed her. That festival changed Linda. She began to act differently, more confident but also a bit arrogant. The respectful village girl was now tasting a new life, one that was taking her away from her simple and humble beginnings. After the festival, Linda changed a lot. She became more confident, but with it came a sense of arrogance. She started going out without telling her parents, wearing clothes that were more extravagant, and sometimes even ignored the village elders when they greeted her. The once polite and respectful Linda was now acting differently. Then came Linda's 18th birthday. The whole village celebrated her beauty, just like they did every year. They gathered around, and Linda wore a beautiful dress her mother had made, embroidered with golden threads. Her mother had made embroidered with golden threads. She received many gifts from the villagers. But this time there was a man named Ethan who brought his gifts a day after her birthday. Ethan was handsome, rich, tall, and fair. Many women in the village dreamed of marrying him. Ethan started visiting Linda often. He brought her flowers and small trinkets, always speaking in a charming manner that made Linda's heart flutter. She liked him and enjoyed his company. During this time, Linda's parents got suspicious of Ethan's frequent visits and tried to warn Linda to stay away from him. But she wouldn't listen. Her arrogance had now gotten the best of her. She told her parents that she was now a big girl and could make decisions for herself. Then, one hot afternoon, Ethan came to visit and took Linda to his house, far from her parents' home. His house was grand, with high ceilings and beautifully carved furniture. He treated her well, and they spent a lot of time together. They talked, laughed, and enjoyed each other's company. But that day, something happened that changed everything. They became intimate. Not long after, Linda realized she was pregnant. She tried to hide it from everyone, including her parents. She even tried to get rid of the pregnancy with the help of Mira and Oki, but it didn't work. Eventually, her mother noticed the changes, the way Linda avoided eye contact, her sudden exhaustion, and her growing belly, and asked her about it. Linda denied it at first, but later she had to tell the truth. When her parents found out, they were disappointed and felt disgraced. The villagers, who once admired Linda and brought gifts, stopped coming. Linda felt ashamed and lost. She tried to reach out to Ethan, but he stopped coming to see her. When her parents and Linda went to Ethan's house to confront him, they found out he had left the village for good. Linda felt betrayed and alone. Her friends Mira and Oki also turned their backs on her, saying they had nothing to do with her pregnancy. The girl who was once the jewel of the village was now facing the hardest time of her life. She had to live with the choices she made, far from the simple and joyful life she once knew. The news of her pregnancy spread fast through the village. Linda, who was once surrounded by friends and admirers, found herself isolated. The community, which had celebrated her every birthday, now seemed cold and distant. The love and admiration they had for her turned into judgment and gossip. Ethan, the father of her child, had abandoned her and left the village. Linda felt deeply betrayed by him. She had trusted him and believed in the promises